go. 3, 2, 1. Yep, there it is. Welcome back to the Beyond the Breaker podcast. We are now episode 4.
Sounds right.
And we're going to introduce to you our interview with Josh Sabatino, Paul's Electric, part of the family of Hunt Electric. Yep. Ben, what are your thoughts on this interview? I will say that I thought it went well. I have a personal connection with Josh from previously. Yeah. And it was pretty much how I saw it going down. So
I didn't know Josh real well before we sat down, but it was this really cool perspective on somebody coming in, established business, like, near and dear to the family. But Josh was really, I think, pretty candid about like some of the pluses and deltas associated with how do you know you need to grow and what's the right way to do it. And then we got to hear a couple of personal stories too.
Yeah.
Olive Garden is well represented in the storytelling.
Absolutely. We now have a full-time Olive Garden staffer here at Hunt Electric. But no, it was a great episode. We thank Josh for his time in coming in and hope you enjoy as listeners and viewers of the podcast, an episode that, kind of goes outside of really the headquarters of Hunt. But what does make Hunt is the culture that we have, the culture that we bring in. And Josh talks about a lot of those things and making that adjustment, but seeing why it's better now to be a part of the great thing growing here at Hunt Electric. So,
and him bringing in some Shells beer didn't hurt.
Yeah, correct. And we'll distribute that maybe. So before we move into that episode, Ben, you have some spark plug.
You messed it up.
Before we move into that episode, Ben, you have some spark plugs you would like to share.
Yeah. We're trying out Spark Plugs as a name. You got to let us know if that's good or bad or better or worse than Tiny Chunks. Yeah. But a couple of things, little personal, little business. A really cool one. We've got a gentleman on our VDC team who does digital modeling, Austin Davis. His sister got married a couple weeks ago. Elena, congratulations and mazel tov. We're talking about Paul's Electric. So just wanted to mention we've got a couple other acquisitions and really excited to get to know better folks from Granite Ledge Electrical Contractors up in the forest in Minnesota. And then we got River City Electric in the Mankato area. And we hope this finds you well and you guys can share some of your successes with us too. More branch office fun things. Our Hudson team just across the river in Wisconsin has just about doubled their backlog of sales here in just the last several weeks. So summer's looking strong and the rest of the year too. Nice work, folks. It's a great time of year to be an ESOP employee, the employee stock ownership program here. We've got our share price reveal here in the next few weeks. And it's just a chance where we get to talk about, celebrate some successes, and then really look at the future and how we can do even more as a team. A little personal thing for me, Mental Health Awareness Month. So, let's not stigmatize that stuff and let's just make sure we take care of ourselves and our people. And last but not least, our very own videographer here, Ben K, is headed to the Minot office where he and Rod are going on a road trip, checking out some sites. So with that, let's tuck in.
Without further ado, Josh Sabatino.
Josh, we're here. Thanks for making the drive today.
Yeah.
We're going to record some stuff, have some conversation, see what shakes out. We have a pile of questions for you.
Awesome.
Yeah. And just so everybody knows, we did not give these ahead of time. With that, Andrew, do you want
to see this?
Yeah. Don't read, don't cheat. You want to get rolling?
Let's do it.
Cool.
Well, he kind of briefly welcomed you in, but Josh Sabatino, welcome to the Beyond the Breaker podcast. You are coming to us from New Ulm this morning?
Yep.
How was the drive?
It was pretty good.
It's a beautiful morning.
It is.
Yeah. So it's good. I came from down south as well. And it's nice.
Yeah.
So, with that, let's talk right away about Paul's Electric.
Sure.
And tell us a little bit about the history of Paul's Electric. The story is in what led up to now Hunt Electric and all things Paul's.
Sure. So let's go all the way back to the beginning.
First,
my dad is Paul. He's the one that started the company. Actually, he bought the company. It's kind of an interesting story.
We've got time.
I think I was like 6 months old when he bought the company. My mom was pregnant with me at the time when my dad decided to buy the company. And he he went into work one day, and the guy that owned the company, I think it was the guy that owned the company, 2 journeymen, and my dad as the apprentice. And the guy that owned the company, he said, "All right, boys, who wants to buy it? I'm done." And my dad's kind of standing behind the 2 journeymen, and he's like, "Well, if these guys aren't going to say anything, I got to do something. Otherwise, I'm out of a job."
Yeah.
So he raised his hand and he goes, "I'll take it." And they kind of negotiated it out. He went and took his journeyman's test shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
And the old owner stayed on and for another year after that, so he could get his master's license. And then once my dad had his master's license and his contractor's license, they kind of parted ways, and he retired. And
Heck of a thing.
Yeah.
Was this in New Ulm as well?
Yes.
At the time?
Yeah,
Okay.
same location that we're
Same
at right
location.
now. Yep.
Got it.
Yeah, it used to be called Vic's Electric. So
Was Vic the previous owner?
Vic was the previous owner. Yep. Yep.
So that's like we talked about a couple of like hand-to-hand personal transactions there, shifting owners, but now it's really different.
Yeah.
And we've got a pile to talk about there, but as it relates to the decision and masterminding behind becoming part of Hunt, how has that looked for you guys? How has that impacted day-to-day operations? And I'm going to say good and maybe not ideal.
Sure.
Because I wouldn't imagine it's all perfection.
Right. Yeah. So what led us to the decision of wanting to kind of come to this partnership was I had been reached out to by Jeff Young, and he said we're kind of in acquisition mode. I had known Jeff for about 4 or 5 years. We sat on the 343 LMCC together, and we had talked and built a relationship, and he called me and he goes, "You still interested in maybe at some point?"
Yeah.
And I was like, Paul's kind of moved on, and my mom is getting close to wanting to retire. So
Does your mom work at the company?
she did. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Cool. I
Yep.
didn't know
So
that.
she's still there, kind of closing down the books as things are coming in.
Yep.
And so Jeff and I and Keith Colvard sat down and had a lunch together and kind of chatted about things. And about 9 months later, here we are.
Yeah.
And I knew a while ago, we just became signatory with 343 back in April of 2019.
Okay.
And I kind of had this mindset that I wanted to get bigger, and I wanted to get bigger fast. And kind of through trial and tribulation, it was like, well, I don't have the backbone to do this, right? Like it's really hard.
Tough market down there.
Yeah, like we would ebb and flow quite a bit, and it was hard to keep. We're in no man's land, so manpower isn't always the greatest.
Sure.
So we were gobbling up some people, and then all of a sudden work would get slow, so we'd have to let them go, and then they'd either go back to non-union or where else, and so it was kind of more the stability and having that backbone to get that growth, right? That's what kind of drove the decision.
Earlier, because I'm very much not an electrician, what is the 343 LMCC
So that's
that you mentioned?
the Labor Management Something Committee.
Cooperation Committee.
There you go.
Okay.
So it's 3 contractors, 3 IBEW members, and NECA rep and an IBEW business manager.
You all get together and compromise and negotiate some things to help the businesses grow and the trades.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of build a relationship to, what do we as contractors need to help get work to go union, and what do they need to kind of want to do that work, right?
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, it's an industry fund. And so it's the committee to spend those dollars, but also discuss, like he said, keeping work union. Not just for one contractor, but for all union contractors. And I will say the 343 LMCC committee has probably done some of the more progressive work from where it was to where it is now in the last 3 years, which was needed. But I mean, to your credit and Jeff Young's credit and those that served on it, it's a very visibly or noticeably different and futuristic, I would say, in the sense of moving forward, which is cool.
Right.
Well, and you guys both have experience with NECA, and while we're here to talk a lot about Paul's and Josh and all that stuff, but like, how has NECA and those different organizational groups, how have they impacted the two of you? Why are you here today because of them? And frankly, like all those good things that they're doing, like looking to the future and trying to build both the union and individual businesses, like how can we continue to support that? What do we have to do?
Yeah, I think so. NECA right away they gave me the option to be either a NECA member or not a NECA member when we became signatory. And Kristen came down and kind of explained all the details. And I was like, I would be dumb not to do that. With all the resources and the training and things like that, going back to what I said when we first became signatory, I wanted to grow and I wanted to get, bigger. And without those NECA resources, that would have never happened. And along with that, you're building relationships with other contractors. You go to monthly meetings or quarterly lunches or whatever, and you're interacting with other contractors, kind of bouncing ideas off of each other. And, every once in a while down the road, it's, hey, I've got this project and I've worked with this general before, but it's a little bit of a stretch for us, but it's pretty much in your backyard. You want to just take the invite? I can make the introduction with the general and,
So, still competitive, but also like healthy in that sort of cooperation as well.
Yeah. I like to call it co-petition instead of competition.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So we're working together to build the industry, right? And if we're not working together, we're just going to fight each other, and it's going to be a race to the bottom.
No, as if you've watched any of the episodes before, I like to make this all about me at some point. One of the things that we do, kind of in my world, associated with the Lean Construction Institute, we're often sitting in the room with our clients, our customers, but also our fiercest competitors who also do really good work in the same local markets. They're using the same local unions, buying from the same supply houses and things like that. But it's, how can we be more efficient together and, without giving trade secrets, right? But it's like, hey, what are some good standard best practices?
Yep.
And I love hearing that there's other kind of groups and institutions that have that same sort of mindset.
Right.
Just because I win doesn't mean you lose. And in fact, maybe all of us can win together.
Right. Maybe if I win this one, you win the next one.
And we both learn something and we both keep folks employed and, the wheel turning around.
Right.
Love that.
Right.
Cool.
Well, and I think to go off of that, it's also from the component of, you have a large contractor who's a part of NECA and a small contractor who's a part of NECA who wants to grow, but maybe realizes they're in a market where they can't. That's where a lot of those relationships and at times acquisitions can happen. But outside of acquisitions, it's partnering on a job when there are workforce goals or participation goals, those kinds of things, or just simply subbing out a scope of work because you don't have quite the manpower for it, but somebody who does. And now it's not a joint venture. It's just a partnership on a job. And you show to the GC, hey, this could be viable down the road.
Right.
Bring us two in again. So I think there's the connection where it's like, your competitors may be on one job, but the next job,
you're working together side by side.
And, Axelson was talking about that on one of the latest episodes where we have a mentoring relationship with Presidential.
Yeah.
And he was like, a win looks like when you beat us.
Yeah.
When you beat us and beat us out on a job and get awarded that. That's fantastic.
We've done a good job mentoring at that point.
Yeah. Right. So there's a lot of positive things there about that, connection between Pauls and Hunt, and now kind of, as one family. But I have to imagine that there were some fears, like maybe some concerns about how that might go, how that might look. Would you lose your identity, right? Would your customers reject you because now you're part of some corporate conglomerate?
Yeah.
What were maybe some of the fears or things that you heard, and how did you address them, whether it was internal or customer facing? Yeah,
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Like our biggest fear was losing that identity and losing customers because of it. And New Ulm is very shop local, stay local, things like that, right? And there's a lot of people in town that if it's Walmart or whatever, they won't go shop there because the money's not staying in the community, And I think we've worked out a pretty good thing. We're going to hang on to that Paul's Electric or PEI name for a little while and the same logo. And then kind of as people get used to us flowing back and forth between Hunt and PEI, then we'll just maybe let it go after a little while.
Sure.
But
what can you tell us a little bit about what PEI is bringing over to Hunt in the sense of kind of the market you guys serve down there? What was your bread and butter? You don't need to disclose customers, but just kind of where you were at with that.
Yes. So we had a couple of decent sized industrial customers in town. And then we do a lot of school work, which a lot of contractors don't like getting into that, right? We like to call them summer slams because school gets out in spring and they got to be back in fall, and you got to get as much work done in that contract as humanly possible.
Right.
And we've kind of excelled at that over the past, 10 years or so. And, so that's kind of our bread and butter down in that area. And, with this relationship, we've seen other opportunities with other customers that we probably would have never seen in the past,
I got a crazy one real quick. For the listeners who may not know where New Ulm is, where is it?
It is
explain kind of where that market is.
Yeah, so if you go, let's call it an hour and a half southwest of the Twin Cities or 25 minutes northwest of Mankato. Give you a couple different reference points there.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now they know.
Yeah, right.
So we kind of, if you take Highway 15 and kind of everything west of the South Dakota border all the way up to, 212.
Sure.
It's kind of our...
East of the South Dakota border?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We're talking the same place.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
With, some of the things there that you're talking about with like maintaining that customer base and being really good at schools, I would say that in the headquarters here in the Twin Cities, we don't do a ton of electrical work for public schools.
Right.
We do maybe more limited energy systems, fire alarm and access control and things like that. Think you can teach us some stuff and maybe help open that market here in the Twin Cities?
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, that's kind of the goal, right? We're in a partnership and, we were acquired and now we're running under the umbrella of Hunt, but we can all share resources, right? It's no different than like we were talking about with NECA contractors. We're sharing ideas and things like that. Let's just do it internally now.
And you have your relationships. That by no means is an acquisition looking to lose relationships that were already established.
Right.
So I think that's kind of the goal of Hunt and all these acquisitions at times is
maintain.
We want you to keep your relationships number one priority.
Correct.
And then we're going to figure it out from there as we maybe make the transition, or you keep your name and we just establish as that goes and you flow right into it.
Right.
Yeah.
And part of the conversations here that we drive and the core purpose here of creating this podcast is like share information, because the guys and gals in the field in Minot, North Dakota are probably never going to visit the office in Chippewa. So how can we share some of those ideas? And my hope is that your email, your phone, your Teams, messenger blows up just a little bit. And somebody's like, hey, we want to look at this public school opportunity. Can you help kind of walk us through that? So I hope we get to share some of that knowledge.
Yeah. I mean, we, like a lot of these schools for us, we started out as we just tried it one time, right?
Yeah.
And I was the foreman that was on the project and I had a lot of trials and tribulations through it. I learned a lot, but by the time I got to the second, third, fourth one, I was asking questions in job site meetings that other people hadn't thought of. Like, this was an issue. We need to figure out if the equipment in the kitchen is actually what's on the blueprint, or is it something completely different? Because I've already gone down.
Did they grab the middle school, not the high school?
Exactly.
Drawings from a different school.
Yeah, when you get your specs and it says a completely different state, and you're working in Minnesota, it's tough to
call timeout.
Yeah. And we got a problem here.
So you mentioned you were foreman on that job.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to kind of just a little bit more about yourself personally.
Sure.
What
you got to paint the whole origin story, man.
Yeah,
the whole origin story.
From that you already said 6 months.
6 months,
company's
right?
about, so let's start there.
Yeah. So born and raised in, well, not technically born in New Ulm. I was born in, I can't say it, otherwise everybody will steal my credit card information.
This is true. A different place.
Very close to New Ulm, but raised in New Ulm.
Somewhere off the Highway 15.
Yeah. But raised in New Ulm and went to school there. After I graduated, I kind of bounced around colleges. I went to Scholastica right away for engineering. And then Scholastica in Duluth, the original. And then I played baseball up there for the first semester. And I went into my guidance counselor and I'm like, so I'm not seeing like my engineering degree here. And they go, well, this is pre-engineering. And I'm like, so after 4 years, I got to go across the street to UMD? And they're like, yeah, pretty much. And I go, what happens if I go to UMD? They go, well, you can probably get it done in 4 years. I go, see ya.
Back to bags, walked about 15 minutes.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I went over to UMD for a couple of years and started working at the Olive Garden while I was there. And that became started to take up a lot of my time, and I was focusing more on work than I was on schoolwork and other extracurriculars. And so I kind of just gave up on school for a little while, and I took a semester off and kind of picked back up the next fall and signed up with Bemidji State, did that all online, still lived in Duluth.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, while I was at Olive Garden, I went from being a busboy, pretty much did every position. I was on call all the time. And finally, they shipped me out to Fargo, North Dakota to be a manager. So I was a manager out there for a few years, and they shipped me back to the Twin Cities here.
So you were like the corporate Olive Garden guy.
I was like maybe fourth in line.
So I full disclosure, I've heard this story from Josh before about Olive Garden. To me, it's fascinating. I know there's more to it, more that probably can't be shared. But when you hear Josh's story, and maybe there's more you want to share about it, but I'm fascinated by it because your path now into Paul's and just kind of the leader you've become with that, I truly think from the stories you've told me about Olive Garden and how you kind of worked your way and how you were the modern day businessman at those Olive Gardens really set you up for a really good spot.
For sure.
And where you're at now. I don't know if there's more you want to share on that.
Yeah, no,
I know there was like maybe 4 of us around.
Yeah.
It was past 8 p.m.
Yeah.
It was good. Yeah. It's good stories.
Yeah, no, I got a lot of experience with Olive Garden, right? I was in every single position that was in each restaurant.
Yep.
I helped open new restaurants. I think it was like 2 weeks I was there. Not even, no, it was my first week. And I was kind of busting my butt, getting work done and listening to what they were telling me. And I just tried to be a sponge. And the manager comes up to me and she goes, "Josh, you can send the new guy home." "Jen, that's me." And she goes, "Well, then send somebody else home." And then about a month later, one of the other managers comes up to me and she goes, "What does Josh want to do in his life?" And I go, "I don't know. How long do I have to stay here before I can be a manager?" She goes, "I think it's 2 years." I said, "Well, in 2 years, I want your keys in my pocket."
Yeah.
And she made it happen for me. So
You made it happen, man.
Yeah.
You got to show up every day. You got to do the thing.
yeah.
On a reasonably serious note, you talk about experience, both, working on public schools, making mistakes encountering challenges
There you go.
as a foreman. You talk about experience at Olive Garden. And I think that one of the things these days we talk about is we have this maybe glorified, sterilized view. I'm talking about like the Instagram and different social media and things like that, where we have this expectation that you just know everything. You show up and you know everything.
Right.
Clearly you didn't.
No.
And as with many other guests that we have, and frankly, probably everyone in this room and everyone in this building, we made lots of mistakes.
Yep.
So if you'll be a little vulnerable, can you maybe highlight some of those mistakes or some lessons that you had to learn with that and how that's helped serve you?
Sure.
I mean, we've all taken lumps. We all got some scars, proverbially, and sometimes on our hands.
Right.
But just say a little bit about that, whether it's in the trades or at Olive Garden or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, everybody makes mistakes, and I like to learn. I like to think that I learn from other people's mistakes. I'm very, very observant of other people, and I kind of watch what they're doing. I'm not saying I don't make my own. I definitely make my own mistakes. But that's where I learn from, is from mistakes. Like if I don't have firsthand knowledge of it, then it's kind of no good to me. You can tell me all the stories you want about something, but if I didn't see it happen, it's very hard for me to relate.
So
The fail forward concept.
Yep.
But, maybe take one of those either, as a leadership role at Paul's or, as a foreman, one of those bumps that you took, be a little bit more specific and, maybe a huge one.
Sure.
I made some doozies.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have specifics, but I know that like the first school that I ran.
Do we need to go ask your coworkers?
You probably could. They would know. They would know.
We wouldn't really make it in time down there.
But when I started doing these schools, I'm not organized by any means. And I know that. Like I have to set myself reminders when I get a phone call and I set it down, I've already forgotten about it. So I try and take notes. I'm not very good at it, but
that's fair.
So I was forgetting a lot of things along the way, right? Like the difference between working at Olive Garden and working as an electrical contractor, I literally, as a manager, I had to click start day at Olive Garden. And if you were the closing manager, you clicked end day. And you forget about it, right? Like you don't have to worry about it anymore. There's nothing that's going to come up tomorrow that didn't get solved or moved on from the day before. Now it's projects that are a month long, 6 months long, 5 years long. You know, you got to remember everything along the way. And so documentation is huge with that in that aspect. But yeah.
Got a two-part question here. So from your time at Olive Garden, when did the transition into the electrical industry happen? And what was that beginning stage to where you are now?
When I first moved back to the Twin Cities here with Olive Garden, I was there for about 6 months. And I think in those 6 months, I had 2 or 3 day shifts. Okay. And my wife and I were looking at starting a family. And I'm like, this isn't going to work, you know? So I went into my manager and I'm like, any way I can get, you know, some day shifts here and there? Yeah. And he's like, well, no, you're kind of the new guy here. So we're just going to stick with what we want. And I'm like, okay, well, here's my 2 weeks then.
And about what year is this, do you think?
That was 2011, 12, I want to say.
Something in there.
Did a quick stint at State Farm for 3 months. Didn't really like it. Called up my dad and I said, hey, you know, you said the door is always open. I think I want to move back. You know, I made sure I had the discussion with my wife that it was okay that we moved back, right? She's from New Ulm as well. So, so we made the move. I actually was driving for about 6 months before we finally moved back and she got a job there. I was driving back and forth, staying with mom and dad every once in a while still.
It's a long commute.
But I've been back for 10, 11 years now. And what was the second part?
Well, so at that point, Paul's was non-union. Correct. So you were not in a formal apprenticeship.
No.
So
I started.
When did you take your test and everything?
Yeah. So I started in high school. This was prior to them changing the requirements. My time before 18 counted towards my apprenticeship. So all of that time counted. And then when I came back, you know, I had to, there was a couple summers where I would come back from college and I would work as well. So I think I got my time in about a year and a half after I went back to work full time. Took my test and took me twice to get it, you know. But first time I took it, my dad said, he goes, just go take it. I'm like, I've never opened a code book. I've just learned what I've learned along the way.
Might be an important piece.
Yeah.
No, what could go wrong? Just go.
And he goes, you're a good test taker. He goes, you'll at least learn what not to know or what you need to know. Yeah. And so I went and took the test, failed miserably, studied my butt off, went back and took it again and passed. And then a year later, almost on the dot, I took my master's and got that. Yeah. And it was at that time that I think it was around 2016. That's when the new high school in New Ulm was built. And that was my first job as I would call it a foreman. I mean, I had been there for 5 years, but I was just working with the tools and whatever. So that was my first job as a foreman. And they had, that was right when precast was starting to get big, precast tip-ups. So we needed to send somebody up to the plant.
And just kind of pause there for a second. Not everybody knows what precast tip-ups are. Yeah. So maybe give a little bit of background as to what the heck are you talking about, man?
So precast is basically they have these big, long, they call them beds, but it's a form that they pour the concrete into and then let it cure for a day or two. And then they ship it to the job site and tip it up in place. And that's now the exterior structure of the building.
So it's one way to really speed up construction and close that building.
Yeah. It's no different than us doing prefab, right?
The semis that take up 2 lanes on the highway.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
Traveling with those things.
Yeah. So we needed to put, for that school, we needed to put our electrical rough-ins inside that concrete. We needed to have somebody on site to get all that stuff put in. And we found out that the plant was about 20 minutes from my parents' lake house. So my dad's like,
that's a happy
I'll go. My dad's like, I'll go. And so he goes up and he put those in. While he was up there, they, they're like, oh, you're getting pretty good at this. You want to do this job while you're here? You want to do this job while you're here? And he kind of did a bunch of different ones that they just kept handing him. And
wait. So you're saying that Paul was now doing work for the precast shop that wasn't for Paul's Electric?
Correct.
Okay.
He was doing it for other contractors, you know, some around the Twin Cities here.
Yeah.
And then he got done with that little stint up there. We got another school, and same thing. It was precast. So he's like, I'll go again. Picked up more stuff along the way, and that's where he actually got a job offer from Wells Concrete. And
funny.
So he's worked for Wells Concrete for 7 or 8 years now.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at that time, he stepped away, and I kind of took over. And, you know, his philosophy was, if I don't leave, nobody's ever going to respect me as the leader of the company, right? Like
If Paul
Paul's
doesn't
always
leave,
there. Yeah.
Nobody thinks that Josh knows what he's doing.
Right.
So how does anybody think Josh knows what he's doing?
Probably not. I mean, I've fallen on my face more times than I can count, right? But
you keep getting up.
Yeah.
Right? Keep failing forward and doing the thing. So with Paul, is he still working?
He's
at
still
Wells?
there. Yep.
Okay. Like this is going to be publicly broadcast. Like, do we get any sort of kickbacks from that? Like, come on.
I wish.
Man.
I've got some. I got some of the Wells hard hat stickers. That's about it.
A little bit of swag.
That's all I've got.
Yeah. Fantastic. So very, very different here. Do you watch other podcasts? You ever been on one before?
I have. Yep.
Okay.
I've been on one.
Yeah.
It was
Gimme.
it was just through a Teams call. It was called Innovation Overload. It's one of them that Nika puts on.
Okay.
And basically what they do is they go to different contractors and they try and see, you know, what are the new ideas that are out there? What are you working on in your business to try and grow it and things like that? So,
That sounds good.
yeah.
And super trick question. Was there anyone on that podcast specifically as a host? Did anybody compare to Andrew with the combination of hair and voice?
No.
Good answer.
Not even a little bit.
I wrote that question actually. You guys were wondering. Said I wasn't gonna ask it. I'm gonna go back to serious. Sorry, no fun here. Podcast.
No, it's all right.
One thing I did want to ask. Actually, we'll have some fun with this one. Best thing about being a Paul's employee, and I would say this in a sense of how have you and the staff that's there still kept the roots and culture of Paul's while this transition's happened? And secondly, when do I get invited to play the golf simulator?
Next fall when it reopens.
Oh, no. What happened?
We've got some improvements to make.
Okay. All right.
The projector died last year. We kind of limped our way along, but
Damn.
yeah.
All right. Okay. So we're cleared that one. How have you maintained the culture you guys had built down there? Maintain those relationships? What approach do you take with that? Even though that, you know, it's Paul's Electric, Hunt Electric now. Mm-hmm. How have you stayed in the culture realm that you built?
Sure. Yeah. So the day-to-day down there, it seems to be business as usual, right? Like we still answer the phone as Paul's Electric. We still do the same BSing in the morning when we get there.
Yep.
And maintaining that culture with the field, like we still do lunches. If I go out to a job site, I'll take the guys out to a lunch. It's a little bit tamer than what it used to be. There were times where we didn't go back to the job site, and now we do.
And I would bet that there were times that was the safe choice to make.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
That school can wait.
They'll be fine.
Summer break for one more week.
We'll put in some overtime next week. But yeah, so some of that stuff has been dialed back. But even like this Friday, we have all the field is coming in. We're going to do a quick little tutorial on Bluebeam and the iPads and have some lunch and maybe a couple beers, you know, and just have a good time.
And with that, what have you seen as a huge improvement to maybe what the resources that Hunt has been able to provide, right? You had the Bluebeam training. What do you see as the...
Maybe this might be one of the tools that we can leverage from Paul's.
There you go.
I'm interrupting here, Andrew.
No, you're good. You're good.
I apologize just a little bit. But Josh,
New Ulm's finest.
Right. You know, check out the sampler pack a little bit. And, you know, this is not like a paid advertisement for any brewery in particular. But you got a couple of choices in here, and we'll make sure we spread the love around. But tell us a little bit about shells. And you got any favorites? You got any things you want to push out there and tell people to try? Good seasonal stuff?
I like them all. And actually, my favorite one, they don't have anymore.
Oh, no.
It used to be called, well, there's two of them, My Fest and Summerfest. Those were my two favorite, but they don't make those ones anymore.
What were they?
No clue. Delicious.
IPAs or no?
No.
The My Fest is like a Maibach spring beer, and
Summerfest is kind of like a Liney's Honey Weiss.
Yeah,
just a little bit sweeter, a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
Sorry for the segue.
No.
Love shells. Appreciate you bringing that up. And again, we'll spread the love and distribute some.
Yeah.
Shells, you owe us $100. Product placement there. I'll go back to the question that Ben so kindly interrupted. But
that's me.
What I would say innovations, let's say, or technologies, or even just processes has Hunt brought to Paul's that you see as innovative in the sense of helping you guys along and really grow your business as Paul's and Hunt as a whole?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing, like I said, is I'm not the most organized person, right? But there's a structure and a process for everything we do here. You know, you get a bid invite from a general contractor or an owner comes to you and says, hey, want to put a number to this for us? And there's a strict, not strict, but there's a process.
Yeah, there's some structure to it.
We go on the project portal, we pull a job number, we fill out all the information. So all the details are for everybody to see within the company. And you can pass this portion off to this person and this portion off to that person. And all you have to do is give them a little 5-digit number and they can go find all that information in the folder, right? Like that's huge. And even you push it all the way to the field with the ACP group and the VDC group and things like that. Like we never had that in the past. That was me trying to come up with some ideas, you know, and one of my really good foremen, we're just sitting down going, what's going to work? What's not going to work? You know?
And I think at the core of it, that's still there. Like that's how we ideate and that's how we come up with stuff. And then we go, okay, is this going to pencil out? Is this going to make sense or not?
Yeah. But now we're a part of a company of 500 office employees and 12 to 1,500 field employees.
Every bit of that.
Where it's not just 10 of us bouncing ideas off, it's all of us. And we can learn from those other experiences of other people and, you know, with the closeout procedures and things like that. Like we can look back and go, that didn't work. Let's not do that again. Somebody else brings it up down the road, go, great idea, but no.
Here's what happened and here's why we're not going to behave that way. With some of that, maybe you talked about ACP and VDC. And for folks who are listening, part of the workflow here at Hunt is when we're going to kind of support the field with prefabricated doodads or widgets, or we're going to make some conduit structures you can bury underground. Please reference Duct Bank from the Bear episode. But when we're going to make stuff, part of that is we have those ACP folks, Advanced Construction Planning, who are taking kind of the plan set and the model and looking at how can we make this ahead of time. And as field electricians previously themselves, they know what works and what doesn't. Right. And the VDC team will also fine tune that model, make sure that we know what to buy, how long to cut the thing, and how to fabricate that to get it on site appropriately. You and I had occasion to work on one of those processes, which is how do we go after jobs? How do we go get those things? And that was maybe a little bit unique to both of us at the time. From memory, we were trying to win a project somewhere in the Mankato School District. And we started to look at, hey, what are those things that we can leverage? It's not just Paul's, it's not just Hunt, but like how can we combine those to make some, super magic sauce? And I remember sitting there and you guys were just coming up with idea after idea after idea. We hadn't even won the dang thing yet. But it was already like, how can we make this win? And how can we play that to our advantage, even in that public scope?
Right.
Like, ultimately, it didn't go our way.
Yeah, we didn't even get the interview.
No.
Didn't even get to there. We were 20 minutes from, we were on the road driving to it and got the phone call.
Josh, you don't need to come in.
It's mathematically impossible.
Yeah.
Which is fine. You win some, you lose some.
Well, you learned something from it.
We learned a lot.
Right? And you also went through the process.
We went through the process. So now next time around, we know that process. We're comfortable with it. We know what's coming next. And we can sit down with Ben and we can go through it and hopefully nail it even better.
Yeah. Put the shoe on the other foot and maybe like speaking to, the next team that comes to be part of Hunt, or maybe something you'd say, hey, fellas out in Chippewa, you folks up in Minot, what are some things you'd encourage those groups that are a little bit separated from HQ? What would you encourage them to get after and really explore and learn about that we as a company can bring to the table and help support them?
Yeah, I think, just the first 3 months, you're drinking from the fire hose, right? Like you're learning all the new processes, you're learning all the people to contact. It's all those decisions that I was making on a day-to-day basis, my decision now is who handles that?
Who do I tell?
How do I get a hold of them? Right. But if I were talking to somebody that were about to be acquired, it's going to get better, right? It's going to get better. It'll be okay. And you'll be happy on the flip side.
A little messy at first.
It is. And every acquisition is different, right? Like,
for sure.
Nobody knows who needs what training on what. So you kind of just get it all. And if you need that training or you've never seen a software or whatever, focus on those ones and just kind of put the other ones to the back or peruse through them.
And I'll ask one more and then I'll let Andrew carry on with a couple of his. Keeping that same sort of, hey, you're new to the Hunt family mindset, what are some things that we frankly ought to improve on to help smooth out that transition and help folks both in the office and the foreman in the field, the journey workers, like everybody? How can we help make that a little bit better?
I think the process as a whole it's good, right? But each acquisition is different. Everybody needs different hand-holding in different areas. It's very hard.
True for every employee we bring in.
It's everyone, right? Yeah. And that's hard to. I sit here as somebody who's gone through it, and I don't think I would have changed anything. Yeah, it was a struggle at some point, but there's nothing that would have made it any different than what it was.
Okay.
Right? I just don't see there being,
that's a fair response.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Yeah, and I think what I gathered from that was just, you're drinking from a fire hose like you had just previously said. It is what it is, and in the long run, it's better that I know this. Even though I may not use it in this first year, I can look back and say, actually, in those first 3 months, I remember talking about this.
Yes.
And it seems so minuscule or seems so, let's just say, elementary to you because you've already been in the business. But it's new and it's helpful maybe a year down the road. When
to at least know where to go to, right? Yeah. Because, one perfect example is, so we were acquired in November of last year. And I went through the whole contract review process for the first time 3 weeks ago. And since then, I've done it 7 times.
Whoa.
So I completely forgot or didn't even know how to do it. Yep. And I was sent a PowerPoint when we first were acquired. And I was like, I got to keep that for later. And I've gotten really good at it now.
So current Josh is thanking previous Josh. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about, you made the transition from Olive Garden into the electrical industry. Can you tell us a little bit about what you would encourage others who are maybe in that 343 market or just somebody who's thinking about getting into the electrical industry? What's your advice, whether it's getting into the office, getting into the field? What would you say to, let's say young adults right now, or even adults that are maybe looking at career changes? Because the opportunities in the local market, as well as just everywhere, are there.
Right.
And they're seemingly not going anywhere for a while.
Yeah.
What's your advice to anybody looking to get in?
I like to think, I love that all these schools lately have been doing these CTE. I don't know what the acronym stands for. I think it's construction trades and
yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll flash up a definition here on the screen during the podcast.
So I love that the schools are doing those things now, and they're trying to get hands-on with the students ahead of time. So I like to say that electricians are the people that are smart enough to go to college, but just didn't really want to, right? Like mostly everybody, I would say 99% of the electricians in the field could have gone to college, could have gotten a degree, could have sat in an office somewhere, right? But we just didn't want to. We wanted to work with our hands. So if you want to work with your hands, try out as many of the trades as you can and see which one fits, right?
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, well, and I think to that point, right, electrical and just math in general.
Yeah.
Right? Utilize the skill set you have. I'm not a math person, but if I was really good at math but wanted to work with my hands, really easy. You could Google that. Hey, I'm good at math, but I want to work with my hands. What should I do for work? I bet you it says electrician.
Yep.
Like electrician. And it's easy. So,
yeah.
And in that sense, let's just, on the flip side, talk about somebody who's maybe in a job that could be related to what they could do at Hunt Electric. what would the advice be there? And how do you see, just from corporate America or restaurant world into Hunt Electric? What are the similarities? What are the differences? What do people in construction organizations, what's the culture like in those?
It's a hard one. Let's start with similarities between Olive Garden and Hunt, right?
Yeah, sure.
Big corporations. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I'm going somewhere with this.
Yeah.
No.
Did you get there? But the similarities, I would say, would be, there's that corporate mentality with both, or corporate structure with both of them, right? The difference between Olive Garden and here is everybody here is working for the same goal, right? And I haven't met anybody in this headquarters or any of the other branches that I didn't like or didn't just, come up to me randomly, because I office out of here once every couple of weeks.
Yep.
And people just come up to me and they shake my hand and they say, "Hey, I am so-and-so." And I'm like, "Okay, sweet. I'm Josh, New Ulm branch, But there hasn't been anybody that's just been like cold or whatever, where you would get that corporate coldness once in a while when we would get a regional manager in or things like that. So yeah, what was the rest of it?
Well, I guess that was a loaded question, but where I was going with it is, and I know that you and I have had these conversations in the past. I know that you played baseball in college and you go on a guy's golf trip every year. And to me, when you get into a construction organization like Hunt or really anywhere, it's taking, in my world, sports and putting it into a construction field, right? You have the field workers who are kind of the athletes, let's say. But to your point, everybody's working for the same thing. And when an acquisition gets made, right, that's a free agent that just comes in. Well, okay, they're part of the team now. It doesn't matter what it is. Matt Myers mentioned it as well, right? ECSI and Hunt are one. We're partners. We're team. We're all going for the same thing. And that's what I like here is like, in the office, let's say it's blue collar industry, white collar office, blue collar industry. There's a team component to that. And so I know that you and I have talked about this, but just even the buddies golf trip, same thing. Like it's competitive. Everybody wants to win. But at the end of the day,
by the way,
nice. It's camaraderie. And where are we going with it? And now you have Paul's Electric joining Hunt in that sense. It's just like camaraderie doesn't stop.
Right.
There's no divide.
Right.
It's Paul's part of Hunt. Hunt is part of Paul's.
We're one and the
same. Same thing.
So. Yeah. And we, going back to like keeping the field involved in all of those things and even our office staff in New Ulm, we did a dinner shortly after the acquisition with all the field people.
Awesome.
Plus, Jeff came down, Wendy came down, so we're kind of trying to make sure that we're sprinkling these corporate people in so that everybody down there is comfortable with it. Right?
Yeah.
I love that.
And at the end of the day, most people, let's just say that are in the office, they have field experience.
Right.
A good amount of them.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say even today, like a majority of our project managers used to be foreman or general foreman. And, so many of our estimators have been in the field and so on. Josh, I want to be respectful of time. And, both for us and the listeners. Is there anything you want to leave folks with? Is there any way you want to kind of wrap things up for today? Any shout outs or kudos you got to give? Got to razz anybody?
Nope, I'm good. No. I guess I would say, just past experience in life is be a sponge, listen to the people around you, make those mistakes. If you don't make the mistakes, you're not going to learn from them. If you just get lucky along the way, then good on you. But most of us don't make it through life that way, and learn from all of your mistakes that you make and from the mistakes of others around you.
Yeah, if you can learn that easy way.
Right.
Right on. I don't have any other questions for today. Josh, really appreciate you being here. Andrew, I don't want to cut you off if you've got another zinger.
Well, I have two quick hitters.
Yes.
Favorite beer on Shell's lineup right now?
Probably the IPA.
Okay. Last time you ate at Olive Garden?
3 or 4 months ago.
Oh, no. Okay. I was thinking you were going to be like, the day I walked out the door.
Prior to that, it was.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. But we drove by, and my daughters know that I'm used to work there, and they're like, "Daddy, we want to eat there." I'm like, "All right, let's go."
And I hate to keep bringing it up, but it's because it's sounding like a running joke at this point, but it was truly like a great conversation that led to what I think is probably where you are today, and just lessons learned,
For sure.
mistakes made, and going back on it, lessons learned again. Yeah, that's all I had.
All right. Are you going to encourage your daughters to be electricians or restaurant managers?
Maybe I'll get one of each.
Boom. That's it.
Nailed it. Thank you for watching this episode of Beyond the Breaker. Thank you to Josh Sabatino again. Ben, thank you. For those watching, listening, Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, check them out. Any more?
Right on. Thank you to all who have been listening and watching. Coming up, we've got Mike Wisney from our esteemed VDC group next. And from there, we're looking at putting together kind of an interesting one with a few apprentices, bringing them in from the field and having a candid conversation here. Thanks.